welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks. Really looking forward to this weekend's event. We have Rozenstruik Sakai in the main event. Of course, Walt here is taking on Marcin Tybura in the co-main. And if you haven't checked it out before, FightNightPicks.com. All sorts of great information. You can find written up interviews with Youssef Zalal, who's on the card this weekend. We also have episodes of Early Stoppage and, of course, Joshua Hart's, our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide. What's he like in this weekend? His best bets, his pop and popcorn fights. Heck, he's even got a parlay over there. And if you want to check it out as well, we have the Fight Night Picks store. You can cop some of the merch that the boys are wearing on the show. So be sure to check it out, FightNightPicks.com. And as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick on any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Ooh boy, and we are back and we are live with Fight Night Picks Kicks. Want to throw out a shout out to everybody that's over there in the chat already, just loading it up. And if you want to help out the boys, hit up the super chat and support the channel. Toss us a like, toss us a sub. It goes a very long way. But Matt, really looking forward to the card that we have coming up this weekend. You know him, you love him, you found him on the socials, Matt Allen at Matt Allen FNP. But realistically, 14 fights, 3 debuts, all short notice, and all of the debuting fighters have fought fairly recently, even Tabatha Ricci having fought just a couple of months ago. But overall, absolutely love the card.
It is. It's a weird fight card, but I would say an underrated fight card because there are a lot of the fights, and I know we're going to get to the fight of the night screens here in a second, but there's a lot of entertaining fights that I do think are going to deliver by the end of the night. There's a very good chance that by tomorrow, we're talking about a 41-year-old Francisco Trinaldo and like a 36-year-old Muslim Salikhov, are two of the oldest fighters in this card, and they could be involved in one of the most exciting fights, which just kind of tells you how odd this whole card is. But again, I can't stop thinking about the heavyweights when I think about the fights tonight.
Jack Bristow over in the chat. Michael A over there. Prince Vegeta's son. Dave Baker saying, click the like, guys. And Alex saying, let's get this. We got Keegan Hall saying, let's go, Craig and Matt. You guys make me money. Only page I go for looks and angles on the fights. Thank you. Keegan, if it's that great, hit up the super chat. It's easier. Pick up some of the merch at the store. But listen, if this is the first time that you've tuned in to Kicks, what we're going to do, we're going to throw it over to that fight of the night screen, as always presented by Manscaped. We'll talk about our 2 picks for possible fight of the nights. And I just realized I didn't adjust the camera angles, so it's going to be weird as we get ourselves in position. But we'll talk about the fight of the nights. We'll come back over and we'll break it down bottom all the way up to top. We got about 2 hours before the card kicks off, and luckily we haven't lost any fights. Like I said, Fiorot supposed to be taking on Marina Moroz, and fortunately we got a short notice replacement there. So if we flip it on over to our fight of the night screen, Matt's got to come up a little bit. I'll come up a little bit. We got Trinaldo taking on Salikhov. What a fight.
This could be an amazing fight. Trinaldo, pretty much a lifelong lightweight. One of the biggest lightweights, though, for the longest time. And it is kind of refreshing that you do see an older fighter trying to move up in weight and not just killing themselves to try to make the weight class as they are later on into their career. But Muslim Salikhov's not the guy you want to be testing yourself against in the welterweight division.
All right, Matt. Yeah, I really do like that one. And then we have, of course, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Miguel Baeza. And listen, I'm sure somebody's going to get finished in this fight. Or It's going to be a knock him out, drag him out type of affair. Absolutely love this one.
I thought Santiago Ponzinibbio was going to beat Kamaru Usman once. That was a real thought that I had in my head. Now, I don't think that's the case anymore, but I do think this is going to be a phenomenal fight because, again, you've got one of the formerly most talented guys in the division against a fighter, Miguel Baeza, who's just such an exciting young prospect.
Absolutely love those ones, Matt. And we have Alex over in the super chat saying, match, if you bad... Hashtag Fight Night Picks.
Thank you, Alex.
So, listen, I got to go up a little bit further into the comments section. I did see it out there, and we tee-hee and we laugh, but where are you? You're here somewhere. Eagle Eye, did you guys see Sakai's stomach yesterday at the face-offs? Hey, this guy has like a six-pack under the flab. He's definitely a guy that kind of lost weight as he fought and early on in his career. And again, you look at Augusto Sakai's overall career. What are the two losses? Overeem and a split decision to Czech Congo. So it's pretty crazy.
And that's the fate of every heavyweight. Like, if you look at pretty much any heavyweight's record, you're going to find a split decision loss to Czech Congo in there. For Augusto Sakai, I don't think his body tells the whole story, you know? Like, he is a very, very talented fighter.
100%. So, let's throw it on down and get through this card, Matt. We have a lot of great fights coming up today. Claudio Puelles taking on Jordan Leavitt to kick off the card. And listen, I am going to be throwing it off during this show to our Instagram. So you can find us at Fight Night Picks. It's fairly simple. But what we do is we throw these pictures up that you see in front of you. Is Keegan Hall puts his money where his mouth is with the $19.99 in the super chat. We're on fire. So appreciate you, Keegan and Alex, earlier on. But when I have a look at this one at Fight Night Picks in the story, it's the same pictures that you see up in front of you. And I'm on an island, 18% with Puelles to 82% that have Jordan Leavitt. And I talked about it earlier on in the week. Both guys, very similar skill sets. Both guys through the UFC careers. And for Claudio Puelles, he hasn't been active in about 2.5 years. Now, he had it out there. It was on the UFC's Twitter page. And I sent it to you at the start of the week where I was like, wow, I like what I've heard out of Claudio. Because he basically said, I've been ready. I just haven't been able to fight. Like, end of 2019, into 2020, couldn't get out of Peru. Then he moved out of Peru, sold some stuff, went to Sanford MMA, committed himself to really getting better at his craft, working with some of the best in the world at a great gym, and now he gets his fight against Jordan Leavitt. And he understands the similarities. Both guys are grapplers. Both guys go for high crotch single legs. Both guys are good on the ground. And their striking's really awkward, and they're both southpaws. I absolutely love this fight. I think it should be a great one.
I think this is a really fun fight matchmaking-wise, but it's a weird fight to put together because these are two prospects who, honestly, they could go out there and beat some of those veterans that the UFC kind of wants to get rid of. Because I do think Jordan Leavitt, and I was kind of hard on him going into his UFC debut, I thought he was a fighter who wasn't ready for the UFC just yet. And maybe I am wrong, but after his extremely violent knockout of Matt Wiman, it's really hard to say that he's not deserving of another. I'd say this is somewhat of a high-profile fight, being the first fight on the card, but for Leavitt, it really does come down to how good his cardio is in this fight for me. Because like you had said, with Puelles, he does have the counter to a lot of the grappling. He does have phenomenal jiu-jitsu and wrestling himself, but I do feel like the variety of takedowns that Jordan Leavitt can go to and his slight ability to start chain wrestling if he can't get that first attempt, I do think he will be able to turn this into more of a cardio fight than anything. At the end of the day, I do feel like the cardio of Jordan Leavitt, will just sort of outpace Puelles.
Matt, everybody over in the comments section hates Claudio Puelles, and we also have up in the super chat from Redman saying that Leavitt is about to be 9-0. I really like Jordan Leavitt. If he beats Claudio Puelles, and I said this earlier on in the week, then boom, I'm on the train 100%. I definitely thought he was going to be able to beat Matt Wiman. Like, that wasn't much of a surprise. But this is the real test because, again, with Jordan Leavitt, when he strikes, he's awkward, but he's more of a single strike to get into the takedown. And his takedowns are normally unorthodox. Again, both very similar. But I do like Claudio Puelles in this fight ever so slightly. This is one of 3 on this card that I'm really on the fence about. But I'm going to stick with my earlier pick from the week. I'm going to go with Claudio Puelles. And hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong on this one.
I'm going to stick with Jordan Leavitt. I do like his ability to wrestle. And honestly, after you get a big win over a guy like Matt Wiman, and yes, I'm using the words big win and Matt Wiman together, but that's just a guy who's been around for a long time. And I really do think it helps a guy's career just get off to such a good start when you're able to beat a veteran like that, because it's such a big confidence booster. I think Jordan Leavitt's going to come into this fight and look really good.
Leavitt opened a -300 at the start of the week. He's around a -210 or thereabouts right now. Salvador Mundi saying, this fight does nothing for Leavitt. Plus sucks. I mean, geez. Be nice to him. Matt, our next fight, we have Sean Woodson taking on a really tough out in Youssef Zalal, and I say that because while he has lost his last 2 fights, good level of competition, Ilir Tybura is a guy that's going to cause the top 15 to kind of worry about signing the bout sheet. And if you look at it realistically, the last time Zalal lost 2 in a row, he ended up winning 4 in a row, getting himself into the UFC. The other loss to Sungwoo Choi, a guy who can strike, who can grapple, who can really do a lot of things well. Just go back to his fight against Gavin Tucker, which was actually very close. If you look at it for Sean Woodson, huge favorite in his last fight. Like, huge favorite, where he was taking on Julian Rosa. And listen, a little bit of a spoiler, but it's a Fight Night Pick spoiler. I can say this. We have 2 great interviews coming up on the channel next week. You're going to get one tomorrow that drops with Tyler Diamond, who has a big fight with PFL coming up against Brendan Loughnane. And then you've got another one with Juicy J, and he's got a big fight coming up this month as well. So Juicy J coming on the channel. But Matt, yeah, when we look at this one, Woodson with the great boxing, he switches stances, he's so long and unorthodox, good takedown defense in the UFC so far. Youssef Zalal, he just continues to go and go and go and go. He's an energizer bunny.
He really is, but this is my problem with Youssef Zalal. If I didn't watch his last fight, I would say yes, he blows the doors off Sean Woodson. I really would. But after that Choi fight, I just worry about his cardio ever so slightly, because we did kind of say Youssef Zalal get out Youssef Zalal. Now, I don't think Sean Woodson's going to go out and start shooting takedowns on Zalal, kind of like Tybura did. And that's the weird thing with Tybura too, like you had mentioned. He could beat guys in the top 15. Like, I really do believe that. He's a guy who could go out there, out-wrestle wrestlers and out-strike strikers, and he can look really good doing both. For me, though, I do feel like the pressure of Youssef Zalal will eventually get to Sean Woodson. What Sean Woodson displayed in his last fight against the Rosa was an inability to deal with the pressure. And I do feel like when you fight a guy like Youssef Zalal, that's the first thing you have to ask yourself, can I deal with the pressure? So I do like Youssef Zalal in this fight. But honestly, I could see this being one of those low-key fight of the nights. Like, if Woodson can get off to a really good start, and then Zalal makes this ugly as the fight goes on, kind of like Julian Rosa did, then I really do think this could be a very entertaining fight.
Clay, great comment up there. You went back and forth on this, but you don't see Woodson finishing, given that 6'2" height advantage cut to featherweight. There's no way he matches Zalal on gas. But again, they're both fairly close. We did see Woodson kind of slow down a little bit in the 3rd round. That gave the opportunity to Julian Rosa, who submitted him by Darce, and it was kind of crazy with the roll into it. I do love the fight. I mean, Jesus is saying this would be a great fight. It's tough to pick winners on this card for sure. For me, I went back and forth on this one, and listen, question mark kicks parlay, a little dicey this week, but I have this one going the distance between these 2 guys, and that's the first pick on the question mark kicks parlay, that this one is going to go the distance. The pick for me is still Woodson in this one. I think if he can get out to an early lead and pump that jab and switch stances and make it difficult for Zalal, it could be a tough fight for Zalal. We also had the interview on the channel from Youssef Zalal where he said, hey, I'm getting the killer instinct back. And he had a similar one with MMA fighting that I watched come out yesterday. So it seems like it should be a good one. Kick's good saying decision fight. You're in agreement with me. So yeah, like I said, I'm going with this one going the decision, and I'm going with Woodson. But I know we're split on this one at the start of the week.
No, I actually do agree with the decision pick. I just see it going the other way in Youssef Zalal. I feel like if this fight is going to be switched up at all from just being striking, Zalal's going to be the one going for the takedowns or securing the takedowns. And just from that, I kind of have to pick Youssef.
Yeah, again, I'm going to go with what I'm more confident in that going the distance. And it was a decent prop bet. And you'll see when we get it parlayed with my second pick, which is a little bit later on. It's going to be a little crazy because I have seen some people disagreeing with it. But Matt, our next fight, we have Manon Fiorot taking on Tabatha Ricci. And I absolutely love what I've seen on the regional scene from Tabatha Ricci. Now, I have to throw this one out there. She was an average minus 2,120 favorite against her last opponent, who was 2-3 in Ormsby back in April. She was a minus 1,614 favorite against 1-5 Grimes, who's 35 years old. She got her down to the mat, boom, automatically, just shot with her head out for a double, got her down, and then ended up getting the submission. I look at this fight, Tabatha Ricci, she's a black belt in judo, she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, she's a Brazilian national Muay Thai champion. I look at Tabatha Ricci, and all of those accolades bring me back to like a Luana Carolina, because she had a lot of national Muay Thai champs. She was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. But for Tabatha Ricci, she's so good. She's coming in on incredibly short notice, up a weight class because she's normally a strawweight. She's down in terms of size. Phoenix is saying Ricci is getting destroyed LMFAO. A lot of people that I respect in MMA have Tabatha Ricci tabbed as a really good prospect. Might be a little early for her. She could be a ranked strawweight moving forward. This is a tough fight for her, but if Ricci gets that first takedown and you are really, really hot and heavy on Manon Fiorot at more than a 5-1 favorite, you're really going to be kind of breathing heavy.
I would put money on this fight, but I don't really think Tabatha Ricci has much of a chance in this fight. For these reasons, you're the much smaller fighter, you've never fought a fighter with this level of competition, and you've never been in this stage before. Like, Manon Fiorot has her UFC debut under her belt right now. She knows what she has to do in camp, what she has to do, and what she can do to put into practice to have results in the cage. Tabatha Ricci knows what to do to win on the regional scene. She doesn't know what it takes to win at the highest level. If she goes in there and loses this fight, I think it could be the best thing for her moving forward. Then when she goes back down to her proper weight class, back down to strawweight, then I do feel like her grappling advantage will start to shine through. But we see this a lot. Like, Stephanie Eggers was billed as this, like, world-class judoka with great grappling. And we saw her get out-grappled quite a bit in her fight. And she was the bigger fighter in there with Tracy Cortez. I'm only saying is that you sometimes have to take these World Muay Thai and World Judo Championships with a grain of salt. I do think that there is a place for Tabatha Ricci in the UFC. I just think it's in the strawweight division. So for me, I do have to stick with Manon Fiorot, but I do believe that Manon Fiorot is going to be in the top 15 sooner rather than later.
Jesus saying Manon did not look great in the Cage Warriors, but has improved. That was her first fight against Leah McCourt that she could have arguably won. It was a split decision. Then after that, she goes on EFC's Ultimate Fighter type show. Did they copy the UFC's logo? Kind of. Do they do a lot of the UFC stuff? Maybe. But she wins that, wins the title, ends up with UA Warriors, finishes a lot of fights. The fight that you like, if you like Manon Fiorot in this fight, is one that I've just continued to talk about. But now automatically it applies. The fight against Corinne Laframboise, the Canadian from Quebec, where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, great on the ground. Manon Fiorot ends up on top, finishes her. But she did a lot of great things in that fight and got stuck in a lot of really tough positions. So if we have a look at this one at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, it is close, 65% Fiorot to 35% with Ricci, and I say close just based on those odds because, again, Manon Fiorot opened a big favorite, she slid even more, she opened a minus 450, she's a minus 595 right now, so like I said, I wouldn't throw this on my card just based on how good Ricci has looked, even against bad competition, but she's winning the fight she should win. But I do like Manon Fiorot in this one.
I thought Manon Fiorot was going to win probably by stoppage against a fighter who had 2 months to get ready for her. She's now fighting someone on a week's notice getting ready for her. Like, it's a really hard ask on 1 week to move up a weight class to fight one of the more dangerous strikers in that weight class. I understand that some people might want to pick Ricci just because, hey, she did look good on the regional scene, but I do feel like this is going to be a massive step up for her. I really do.
Really do like this fight, and we'll see what we get in it. But, Matt, we move to our next fight. We have Alain Petrie taking on Mason Jones. Petrie coming in, what, 154.5? Mason Jones at 156. You know how good Jones' boxing is. And Matt, this is where I get to throw a little bit of shade, and I might have texted you this earlier on in the week, but there were a lot of people, yourself included, your big selling point. And again, behind baseball, inside baseball, we started off the video for this one at the start of the week saying, hey, this is a really tough one because we didn't even know what weight class it was going to be at. The UFC advertised it at welterweight. There was different places saying lightweight. Ultimately, it is lightweight. But my point was Mason Jones has spent time at Team Alpha Male, even when he was with Cage Warriors. And then coming into this one, he's been in the States getting ready at Team Alpha Male. Now, you had said, you know, they used to be a lower weight class gym, or they are. And Tyler Diamond, in his interview, is going to talk about that. He said, you know, I started training with him in 2009, lower weight class gym. But now in the last 2 or 3 years, they've really kind of added a breadth of fighters where...
Wait, Craig. So my bad. The fighter I already thought was going to win by a lot now has a way better training camp than I had originally thought.
That's the thing. I mean, Mason Jones has had a great camp over there. He's been making the move between Wales and the States. He's an Abertillery guy. Abertillery's finest. But yeah, Mason Jones taking on Alain Petrie. I've seen it up there in the comments section, and I can't find it because it's moving so quick right now. But I did see a few different people saying Mason Jones, Sean V's hard on him. But yeah, I really do like Mason Jones in this fight. For Alain Petrie, he's one of those guys that I would expect if he gets on bottom, he's going to get slippery. But even against Bobby Green, he didn't really threaten a whole lot.
Exactly, and the fact that I saw him get dominated by Scott Holtzman... And listen, Scott Holtzman's not a bad fighter by any means, but if I think to myself, what's a way more improved and younger version of Scott Holtzman? Almost a carbon copy of Mason Jones. Like, stylistically, those are very, very similar opponents. And the thing with Jones is he's got good offensive wrestling. He's got good defensive wrestling. It's not like cardio is a big issue for him. Now, yes, he did get tired against Mike Davis, but, like, that fight's output was just absurd. Like, anybody would have gotten tired with a pace like that. And with Jones, again, I know we're both very high on him, and we both kind of see that top 15 future for him. For Alain Petrie, the one thing he can take advantage of is that Jones is hittable. If you can catch him with a big shot moving in, you might be able to hurt him. Now, he ain't big big shots from Mike Davis, who is a very big puncher for this weight class. So it's hard for me to see a world where Alan Petrie is able to go out there and knock out Mason Jones. But that's the only area of Jones' game that I do worry about when he's fighting sort of those powerful strikers at 155 pounds. If you do have this mindset when you are fighting guys like the Justin Gaethjes of the world one day or the Dan Hookers one day, like those are guys who are really going to take advantage of your hitability factor. But I see him quite honestly running over Alan Petrie in this
fight.
fight.
I mean, for Mason Jones, it's an important fight. 81% of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram have him to win. He's a decent-sized favorite. I considered throwing it into a question mark kicks parlay, but he's about a minus 335, so if you do like him, you throw him in there. I've got another guy later on in the card that's just slightly better odds, but still not the very best. But both of us, of course, going with Mason Jones. Matt will move on to our next fight. We have Francisco Trinaldo taking on Muslim Salikhov. And if you thought that Muslim Salikhov's last fight was sketchy against Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, where it ended up a split decision for Salikhov, but I think that Zaleski won the fight, this is a really tricky one. Francisco Trinaldo arguably on a 5-fight win streak, if you even consider that Hernandez fight, Texas judging, hometown guy, really weird. But you look at it for Salikhov, and it's been a weird run too, because he beats Melvin Guillard in impressive fashion, ends up in the UFC, win. And listen, how good's Ricky Rainey? I mean, they always build him as like Wonder Boy's training partner. Like Ricky Rainey, watch out for him. He's out of the Carolinas. He's a good fighter, but he wasn't. You look at it so far, I mean, it is... how good's Nordin Taleb? We think he's good.
He's not like a terrible fighter by any means, but this is a really weird fight. Because again, you've got one of the older fighters in just like the UFC, especially in the lower weight class. Like, you could be 40 and be a heavyweight. It's not the end of the world. It's very rare you have a guy in his 40s at 170 pounds who's still somewhat competitive. And I know Trinaldo, like the majority of his runs, even been at 155 pounds, which is even crazier to think about. It depends what version of Muslim Salikhov we get in this fight. If we do get that sort of tentative version, maybe Trinaldo gets some of the big shot early on, and Salikhov's a little bit worried to open up with all of his wild kicks and strikes, then I do see a world where Trinaldo could win this fight. But at the end of the day, I just think Salikhov can keep this fight at kicking range, and I don't think that the leg kicks of Trinaldo are going to be able to outwork just the wide variety of kicks that Salikhov can hit Trinaldo with. So at the end of the day, do I think Trinaldo can hit Salikhov? I do. I just don't know if he's going to have enough power at 170 pounds to put Salikhov down and away. So at the end of the day, I do have to pick Salikhov.
D. Acre over in the chat saying, let's get some likes, guys. These two are definitely killing it lately. Appreciate you. And Ben saying, fade everyone who's coming off the old COVID complications, LOL. Yeah, I look at this fight and it is tricky. Again, because Trinaldo, a lot of pressure. He's always there. He's tough. He's gritty. And those are things that, like, you know, it's the old John Volante effect. When we're starting to list intangibles.
Just a great guy.
It's real. Oh, he's good. Real athlete.
Always got a smile on his face.
And I did see there was a comment out there this week, and somebody, I think it was on Reddit, like, Kung Fu would never work in MMA. Wushu Sanda Master is the king of Kung Fu in this fight. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram in terms of the votes, not all that close. 81% Salikhov to 19% for Trinaldo. So a lot of people do have Muslim Salikhov in this fight. It should be a great one. I love it. Yeah, but it is tricky. It's tricky for both guys.
For as good as Trinaldo looked in his last fight, and for as underwhelming, I guess, Salikhov's last performance was, I do feel like a lot of people are underrating Salikhov in this fight. I do feel like he should be, honestly, a bigger favorite than he is. I'm kind of surprised at the odds as close as they were. Because Salikhov, here's the thing, I understand his output can be low sometimes, but if you're a guy who does move forward and leaves themselves open sometimes when they strike, like Francisco Trinaldo can do, he's a great counter striker, and I do think he's going to catch him with a big shot sooner rather than later.
All right, Matt, we'll move into our next fight, and it seems like the conversation over in the comment section's already moved there. Boser Latifi, what a weird fight. Now, Matt, I threw it up there, and I did change these ones out, because our conversation at the start of the week was, holy smokes, Ilir Latifi going to fight Derek Lewis. He was, what, 246 or thereabouts? Tanner Boser's last fight against Arlovsky was 232. Now Tanner Boser is 242 and Ilir Latifi's 240, and you can look at that in a lot of different ways. So I'm just going to say the way that I look at it, and then I'm going to hand it off to you, because I know you're fairly incensed about this.
I've got two, yeah.
For me, Edmonton's or Bonneville's own Tanner Boser, training with KB Buller out of Hayabusa, but also Shade Bears MMA, is a guy that has fought some of the best competition in the world. In ACB, over with M1 Global, as pro Patria. Terrific work. A treat to watch.
Thank you.
I appreciate you for the super chat. The sport today has been insane. The likes are already up there. You're great. Tanner Boser's fought a very high level competition. Yes. And he's won more than he's lost. And I know this sounds really cliche. He's a great volume striker. He throws really nice kicks. He can work in combination. And he knocked out Felipe Lin's cherry on top if you want to talk about UFC fights. And he has a great Instagram. Now, Jesus is saying who y'all got. I had Latifi at the start of the week. Boser moving up in weight could be a good defensive move to try and add a little bit of size to really stuff some of those takedowns. And I saw it in the comments section. Somebody said, he's got 100% takedown defense in the UFC. He's going to win 100%. One takedown by Cyril Gane and one by Pessoa. Those are the only two that he's had so far in his short UFC career. Ilir Latifi, a known takedown artist and a guy that submitted Ovin St. Preux. It's a really interesting fight. This is one of, again, 3 fights that I have listed as like coin flips. I have this one, Puelles and Leavitt, and then to really give it Todorovic and Rodriguez. But in this one, I have a really hard time. So what are you thinking?
Okay, I look at the weight gain for Tanner Boser and almost the exact opposite way, which is interesting. That's actually why I want to talk about this. The reason Tanner Boser is so good at defending takedowns is because he doesn't weigh very much. He's very fleet of foot for a heavyweight. He has great footwork. And I know in the Arlovski fight, it was kind of weird because Arlovski, yes, he's older than dirt, but like his footwork is still really, really good. And it was weird because Boser normally can out footwork guys, especially the heavyweight division, and he wasn't able to do that against Arlovski. My whole point is, him weighing a little bit more isn't going to help his footwork and his movement, and I really think that's the thing that makes him special as a heavyweight. I think of Tanner Boser, he has one of 2 ways of looking at this. He's either thinking, okay, Stipe Miocic lost to Francis Ngannou and said, hey, I need to gain some more weight so that I can, like you said, not only be bigger to deal with the punching power, but also be big enough so that I can either take him down and use my own wrestling. Boser can either look at it in a similar way and think, if I'm either so much bigger than this guy physically, he's just not even going to have a chance, or like you had said, he has fought some of the best fighters in the world. He almost beat Andrei Arlovski in what was a very uneventful but fairly close fight. So maybe he's looking at Ilir Latifi like, hey, this is some light heavyweight on a 3-fight losing streak coming up to fight me in my weight class. Maybe he didn't train all that crazy hard, is all I'm saying. Like, 10 pounds is enough weight that maybe you did just take a week off in the middle of camp. Like, there are a lot of different things you can get into. At the end of the day, though, I still think Tanner Boser could beat this version of Ilir Latifi. I just don't think this is the right weight division whatsoever for Latifi. People are joking over in the comments that he's 5'10" and heavyweight. Like, it's ridiculous. I shouldn't be able to tower over a heavyweight fighter in the UFC. And the fact that Ilir Latifi...
Chris Barnett was like 5'7".
Okay, that's a very good point. But just Ilir Latifi does look very out of place in the heavyweight division, and I understand it's near the end of his career. He's just trying to change something up to get wins, but I do like Tanner Boser in this fight, even with all those question marks I have coming into this fight.
Yeah, I've still got Ilir Latifi in this one. So to go into the comments section, Kiko Sierra, I had a 2-1 Boser when the fight actually happened. I watched it 2 more times, and then I had it 2-1 for Arlovski. And Jesus, you've been filling up the chat, and I appreciate you. People think Ilir won his last fight against Derek Lewis. Ilir was the only one that thought he won that fight. I had the numbers there when we were doing the original. It's somewhere here. Anyway, it wasn't close on MMA decisions. It wasn't very close all the way. Bailey Ripplinger saying Canadians stand up for Boser. I don't have to stand up for anybody. I've got Latifi in this one. But again, this is one of 3 where I have it really, really close. So it is what it is. Move on to our next fight, Matt. We have Montana De La Rosa taking on Ariane Lipski. Queen of Violence taking on no nickname. We have Elevation. I was going to say Evolution, but that's in Fredericton. So we have Elevation's Montana De La Rosa, the former high school All-American wrestler. She has a great pedigree in terms of jiu-jitsu, taking on a really tricky fighter in Lipski, whose build is a bit of a striker, a bit of a jack of all trades, but we haven't really seen it so far in the UFC. And for Lipski, her best win's the Luana Carolina win, which has kind of appreciated since Carolina beat Botelho not that long ago. For De La Rosa, she's only lost to good fighters, and she's only beat not the greatest fighters. So this is kind of like a stay away and worry about it fight. I know I actually almost considered it for the question mark kicks parlay because De La Rosa minus 275 favorite. But again, I really thought about it critically. I don't love the odds that way, but I still like De La Rosa in this one.
Often when people say jack of all trades, they follow it up by saying and master of none. And that really is what Ariane Lipski is. Like, we heard, oh, the violence queen. She's coming over. Like, she's great on the ground. She's got great striking. She's okay. Like, this fight really comes down to, can Montana De La Rosa out-wrestle Ariane Lipski?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so do I. Like, with Lipski, she's an okay ground game, but my real problem with her is she's not a fighter who's so good off of her back that she can then flip the position into getting on top. She doesn't have bad jiu-jitsu by any means, but she's a fighter who really relies on that top position to then get off that ground and pound and then go for a submission. I really doubt she's going to be able to go out there and take down Montana and Dela Rosa. And listen, this really is a fight to just get out of the basement of this division, because like you had said, neither one of these fighters have a quality win on their record yet. And honestly, even after this fight, you could still argue that neither one still do, but this fight really is to differentiate themselves just from kind of entry-level UFC fighters, because for Montana Dela Rosa, she was hyped up a lot. Like, she was on the inaugural season of The Ultimate Fighter that made this division. She was marketed, I won't say all that heavily, but, you know, she's a known commodity in this division. This is a big opportunity for her against a former champ, and I really do think she's going to be able to make the most of it.
At Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 54% Lipski to 46% Dela Rosa. Dela Rosa, again, big favorite in this fight, as, we're not going to spam in the chat. There's no need for any of that. But when we do look at this one, it is somewhat close. Again, I don't necessarily love the odds, but with Dela Rosa's wrestling pedigree, I saw the comment over there too, and I'm not going to be overly critical about it, but the only point that I have to say is Dela Rosa's look good in her losses, not in the one against Araujo. She did not look good in that one. She got totally outboxed, but I don't necessarily see that in this one. It is a tricky one, but I'm going with Dela Rosa. And we move on, Matt, to our next fight. We have Makwan Amirkhani taking on Kamuela Kirk. And again, I got to give shouts and credit where credit's due to MMA Prospects and Cage Side Press's own Sean Bitter. Go follow him over on Twitter. I have no more rhymes, but all I have to say is really good preview and his welcome to the UFC for Kamuela Kirk. Kind of along the same lines of where I was going with the fight. And listen, again, credits to Sean Bitter, not to me. But Kamuela Kirk, he was very, very fluent in jiu-jitsu with his black belt before he brought in his striking. Now his striking's absolutely on point. He made Daniel Swain quit in their last fight, which, Michael Chiesa said would never happen, but then it did. I really do like what I've seen out of Kamuela Kirk. Again, the losses are against quality opponents. For Makwan Amirkhani, we made the joke at the start of the video, how good's Andy Ogle? I mean, how good's Danny Henry? But for Makwan Amirkhani, you know how good he is on the ground. He had a fight against BKFC's own Jason Knight, who's going to go fight for what? Another bare knuckle organization? The Game Bread FC.
Ooh.
And he had a big win after that one too. But again, Makwan, good jiu-jitsu. His takedowns are what they are, and he gets beat by very good fighters.
Makwan Amirkhani, listen, I see you lousing on, love how Matt ripped him apart. It's just the truth. Like, he quits in fights. It's not a controversial thing to say, because
the weight was an issue for the Burgos fight, and yeah, it didn't go all that well.
So wait, you're telling me he would have been undisciplined in his camp, which is still a problem with Makwan Amirkhani. Like, this is my problem. Every time we talk about Makwan Amirkhani, it feels like his name is really close to the top 15, and it doesn't make any sense to me as to why it is. Like, he fights really, really good fighters, it seems, every single time out, and he loses, and then they give him, like, a UFC newcomer that he beats, and then they're like, okay, he's ready for another borderline top 15 guy again. Like, Kamuela Kirk is getting an absolute golden ticket right here, because Makwan Amirkhani is one of the most beatable fighters with one of the biggest fan bases in the UFC, because Amirkhani has that X factor that has fans outside of just the MMA world. And I know, like, you throw out the tweet, do people like when we talk about other sports? Not a lot, honestly. People in MMA normally just watch MMA, like that's their sport. So the fact that Amirkhani has this other fan base that he brings into the cage with him when he fights is really important. And if Kamuela Kirk can defend some takedowns and force it to become a striking fight, I think he could win this fight. I am still going to pick Makwan Amirkhani, though, because I have seen him out-grapple decent grapplers. And I know we kind of joke, like, Chris Fishgold, whatever, but, like, if Fishgold's good at anything, it is grappling. And the fact that Makwan Amirkhani was able to out-grapple him was an impressive way to beat him. Yes, he did lose to Shane Burgos because he got tired and dropped a bunch. Yes, he got absolutely demolished by Edson Barbosa, but that happens to a lot of people.
On super short notice. But yeah, when I look at this one, I still like Kamuela Kirk. I like the kicks to the body. I see it up there in the chat. Laser of a jab. And then Tejas Malik saying, don't even know his opponent. Well, let me tell you this. He's good. Oh, you said before you don't like Amirkhani here. Well, that's fair. Matt, 463 tuning in right now. Only 91 likes. Takes 2 seconds. Hit that thumbs up. But when we have a look at this one at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, might come as a bit of a surprise. I had the order shuffled a little bit. But 70% Amirkhani to 30% going with Kirk. Dave Baker hitting us up in the comments every single week. And we appreciate you in the comments, but also with the super chat. Cheers to FMP. I've got Kirk. You've got Amirkhani?
I do, ever so slightly. Again, these are the fights Amirkhani wins. He's going to lose the second they're like, hey, you want to fight Calvin Kattar? But, like, he's going to win. I shouldn't say he's going to win this fight. These are the types of fights that Makwan Amirkhani normally excels in.
Matt, you talk about rolling the dice. I'm rolling the dice. Son of a gun. Tom Breeze is my second half of the question mark kicks parlay. It worries me so much. He's a minus 265 favorite. Normally, when fighters are like that, you don't worry so much. He's taking on Antonio Hoyo. Now, I see some people like Hoyo. He is a good striker. Maybe Breeze is going to, let him strike a little bit. Because what Tom Breeze does is, if the game plan's to grapple, well, I'm going to grapple. If the game plan's to strike, well, I'm going to strike. And he outstruck KB Buller. Again, whoever thought, if you're dabbing your bingo card, KB Buller came up twice. Bingo on your side. But when I look at this one, Matt, it is a little tricky for poor Antonio Hoyo. Again, the Muniz fight, he lost by decision quite handily. Then he lost quite handily to Duran Win, where both guys got tired. It was up a weight class. Now you have a Hoyo cutting more weight. Tom Breeze used to fight at welterweight. Now he's at middleweight.
There we go.
So now we have a fight here where, yeah, I can't go with a Hoyo. If you like him, you like him. Tejas Malik likes him, but yeah, I don't like a Hoyo here.
Okay, I'm just going to make a basketball. I was listening to a podcast. There was a guy saying that Juwan Howard was the Wizards' best player at one point, and he was joking, like, was Juwan Howard ever even good at basketball? Is Antonio Hoyo that good? Like, here's the thing. We might say, like, oh, I really like the best version of what Tom Breeze is. I don't even know what the best version of Antonio Hoyo is. Like, his best version is, like, this mythological Thiago Santos in the gym, but we've never seen that in the cage. And I'm to the point now where I don't care what I hear about what people do in the gym anymore. I don't care about how many world titles you have outside of MMA. Like, how you fight in the cage is who you are. Like, what you put into practice is the type of fighter that you are. Antonio Hoyo is a very low output striker who has like good technique, but I wouldn't say like top tier power. He's just an oddity in this division. And with Tom Breeze, like you had mentioned, maybe on Tom Breeze's off night, he's not able to beat Antonio Hoyo, but yeah, on his on night, he should blow the doors off him. So I really do think Tom Breeze, if he is able to mix it up with the wrestling and some of the striking, he might not be as good of a wrestler as Duran Win is, but he's a much more improved striker, and I think he's much better at incorporating his wrestling and his striking together. And for those reasons, I do like Tom Breeze in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus saying Hoyo's Contender Series performance was impressive, and I do agree with you. He did look good, but again, you look at the level of competition going in and then into that fight, it is really tricky. Matt, Breeze minus 265, and then I've got Woodson Zalal to go to the distance. It goes to a plus 103 or thereabouts. So, listen, I just want to get back in the win column. It's been a couple weeks without the QMK parlay hitting, but the results have been decent. Like, we had a good fight night the last time out. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks, Matt, for this one, Breeze and Hoyo, 80% Breeze to 20% Hoyo. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Breeze. You've got Breeze?
I do.
Shooting the Breeze. Matt, next fight, Disco Todorovic. Todorovic? I've always struggled with the name, and Matt, I pride myself for being good at names, but this is a tough one for me. Dushko. He's taking on Gregory Rodriguez. And Matt, for Gregory Rodriguez, wow. A lot of people, thought Josh Fremd was going to beat him and win the belt and then end up in Contender Series or the UFC. And Gregory went in there and decided, hey, F that. I'm going to knock you out with the right hand, and your head's going to bounce off the canvas, and it's going to be one of the craziest knockouts that I've seen recently. And the fight before that, huge win by finish. And then before that, now we're starting to tread into the territory where Jordan Williams knocked him out. So it's worrisome, but I do like what I've seen out of Gregory Rodriguez, even before the loss to Williams. The guy's special. Dushko, coming back quick off a finished loss, beating, Tarantula? Like, it's really tough. Daquan Townsend, it's tough to tell what we get out of Dushko. And Gregory Rodriguez has gained all week, and the line's starting to get really close. This is a really tough fight, and I see the people over in the comments section, they're not really sure.
I understand why people like Gregory Rodriguez, but I feel like people are just burying Dushko because of his last fight. And listen, it's easy to bury a guy after he has his hands down by his hips and basically just gets hit in the chin like 25 times in a row. It wasn't a great performance, don't get me wrong. But I do feel like there is a version of Dushko Todorovic out there who can compete with top guys in this division. Because again, think of the best version of him. He's an extremely compact fighter for this weight class who has ridiculous hand speed, really good power for his size, and he's got decent trunk movement. I won't say head movement, but he can at least move his body a little bit. There is a version of Dusko who I do think, I'm not going to say like Jamal Hill, but I always kind of think Jamal Hill when I think Dusko Todorovic in terms of the ways that they can strike, where they can switch stances. They do it with the punches. Now, Hall has quite a few more kicks, but I do think that Dusko Todorovic has a decent ceiling. It will be interesting. This is one of those fights that, like, if Dusko loses, he could be out of the UFC and we never hear about him again, or if he wins this fight, it might completely change his career and he's right back on the hype train that he originally was. I still have to stick with my pick of Todorovic, but I am on the fence about this one.
Yeah, I mean, if we have a look, or if I have a look at the Instagram DMs, I know Wyatt Kenny, Aaron Dirty Laundry, but we were talking about this one earlier on in the day, and I saw you over in the chat earlier, so we'll talk about it. The fact that, man, like Josh Fremd, that's a big win, and Gregory Rodriguez was a big underdog in that fight, so it is a really tricky one. Again, I had this as a 50-50. I'm going off of Dushko based on previous performances, but if Gregory Rodriguez wins, I'm perfectly all right with being wrong. People can trash me for it, but listen, it's a flip of a coin to me.
And it would be an exciting guy to win in this division. Like, if Gregory Rodriguez steals the hype of Dusko Todorovic, like, it's a brand new addition to
And
the
there's
division.
Wyatt Kenny, Rodriguez for the win, and Zachary's saying almost 500 in the chat. Let's get into it. It takes a couple of likes to change things. We got to get this Fight Night Picks Army rolling. And listen, we're about 500 subscribers short of 25,000. I have a package coming in the mail next week for a special content piece. Maybe it'll be a little bit of an incentive, but yeah, there's some neat stuff on the way with Fight Night Picks. And Tej is saying Gregory's underrated here, guys. Come on. Gregory, we'll get you on the show. We'll have to get Gregory on. Matt, Santiago Ponzinibbio is taking on Miguel Baeza. And if you told me a couple of years ago that Santiago Ponzinibbio would not be favored to beat Miguel Baeza, I'd say, hey, you're crazy, or you're from Florida, or maybe you have some Puerto Rico connections. Because Argentina's own Santiago Ponzinibbio has taken a huge hit based off of one fight, kind of like Dusko. But again, Dusko, much younger. Santiago, much older. But it's the health problems that really kind of worry you. And listen, we've seen a guy with health problems lose 2 big fights in a row in this division in Jeff Neal. And I mean, how crazy is it to say that? Santiago Ponzinibbio, a little bit older, but the hype was still the same. So I really do worry about this fight for Ponzinibbio. We have it as a possible fight of the night because Miguel Baeza goes in there and swings. And oh, by the way, crazy win over Takashi Sato as well. So I absolutely love this one. What are you thinking?
This is a very, very fun fight. Now, I know I've been pretty high on Ponzinibbio, especially in the past. And listen, I've tapered my expectations going into this fight. I don't think he's the same fighter who was just knocking everybody out, moving up the division. But I look at Ponzinibbio more. You brought up Jeff Neal. I kind of look at him more like kind of Thiago Santos, if anything. Like, he suffered the kind of injuries that take away from your explosiveness. I know Jeff Neal, like, there was the COVID and all that stuff, and again, who really knows how damaging that could be to your lungs over time, but, like, when you break your hands, when you tear ACLs, those are things that directly impact your actual skill output. And with Ponzinibbio, the fact that he did break his hand is a very concerning thing, and he had, MRSA, staph infections. Like, it was just one thing after another for Ponzinibbio. Things like that keep you out of the gym, too. And there's different kinds of injuries. Like, fighters talk about this all the time where, oh, I had one injury, but I could still do jiu-jitsu. I just couldn't take any head trauma. When you have staph and MRSA, you can't roll. Like, you can't train with anybody. You're isolated by yourself on really bad antibiotics. So for Ponzinibbio, these are injuries that not only have changed the way he has to fight, but they're also injuries that they've kept him out of the gym. Now, with all that being said, I still think he's a good enough fighter to land one big shot on Miguel Baeza for this reason alone. Miguel Baeza is hittable. Now, that makes his fights very, very fun, and I feel like that's why I'm so excited for this fight, because Miguel Baeza is going to give Ponzinibbio more of a chance than he should have in this fight. Because Baeza, listen, he's the younger guy. I think he's more durable than Ponzinibbio at this stage of his career. I don't think he has the hand speed, though. I think he's going to have to beat Ponzinibbio with output, whereas Ponzinibbio, even at this age, like, power's the last thing to go, and I still think Ponzinibbio has good power.
And I mean, Harley Hall making a good point over there in the chat. Baeza chin test time. 100%. It 100% is. We've got Christine Joyner saying Baeza by TKO in the second round. And I like Baeza in this fight. I think it's just going to be boom, 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 boom. Combo, combo, combo. Just pressure, pressure. Or, again, like you said, Ponzinibbio with the one big shot. So if you do like Ponzinibbio, 100%. But over there, Bailey Ripplinger saying this fight is fire. And Adnan Sharma saying this should be in the parlay. Fight doesn't go the distance. Isn't it, Craig? I already gave you the pick. So Kiko saying this is a y'all must have forgot fight for Ponzinibbio. Matt at Fight Night picks 67% with Baeza to 33% for Ponzinibbio. But if you like him, you like him. It is what it is, and you hate to say that, but what Max Holloway does. Matt, our next fight, Roman Delije taking on Laureano Staropoli. And Matt, I love the fight. Staropoli, what's he good at? Hell of a striker. Hell of a striker. Made the move to the States, really training with some good fighters. And for Roman Delije, also made the move to the States. And this guy, Georgian, training out of Ukraine with an all-time boxer, kickboxer. And then he's like, hey, well, I'm going to go to Extreme Couture so I can pick up some fights when they're in Vegas last year. And he did, and he looked good, except for against Trevin Jones, who's also a striker. But still at Extreme Couture with the crew of Eric Nixick, the bigger guys. I would think a perfect training partner. And this is my, law ball, but a Max Grecian or who else? There's all sorts of big guys there. But for Roman Delije, look good on the scale. He did the last time, but cardio started to wane because he has a high work rate early. Love the fight, though.
Roman Delije is the type of guy who eventually, it kind of comes to where, where do skills outweigh just sheer size? That's the way I look at this fight. Because Delije, yes, he has a lot of skills, don't get me wrong, but he relies on his athleticism and explosiveness to get off a lot of those techniques. Where for Staropoli, he does have some of that explosiveness, don't get me wrong, but again, this is a guy who fought at 170. Roman Delije could never make 170 pounds. He probably hasn't weighed 170 since middle school. It's been a while. But the difference is, and again, last basketball reference, I swear, Luka Doncic said the NBA is easy because everyone relies on their athleticism, and he's just so fundamentally sound that when you're always making little mistakes but you're correcting them with your athleticism, he's going to make those mistakes really big because he's just going to out-fundamentally you. Staropoli could come into this fight just throwing 1-2s and make Roman Delije look terrible. I can fully admit that, but I do think that the size advantage that Delije is bringing into the cage is going to make that takedown attempt a little bit easier to get. It is going to make his strikes a little bit more powerful on Staropoli, and I do feel like as this fight wears on, just the size of Delije is going to wear on Staropoli.
Matt, we premiered an episode of Early Stoppage last night with myself and John Franklin. JW was in the chat for that, saying, Brother Duos go. Please always do Brother Duo. JW, how are we supposed to grow the channel? How do you expect this to get any bigger? The Brother Duo can't always be together for the shows. And Salvador, Monday, you're just a dink. Now, when we look at this fight in terms of the votes, 80% at Fight Night Picks have Delije to get the win. And he is a big enough favorite in this fight. So let's bring up the odds at Best Fight Odds. And all you got to do is look it up. Hey, open a plus 130. He's a minus 158 right now for Staropoli. He opened a minus 150. He's a plus 131. So if you do like Delije, that is cool. And JW saying, make question mark kicks always Brother Duo. But we always do. So there is that. Yeah, I still like Roman Delije in this fight. Again, FILA World Championship in grappling in 2013. He was an ADCC champ in Oceania. Really getting around for his grappling. He does get way too funky and happy with some of those moves that you don't see always work, like the heel hooks and the knee bars and just leg locks. And I mean, hey, maybe if he married that with a John Danaher, it would work. Maybe he's got to hang out with Joe Rogan a little bit. But yeah, it is tricky. Clay Loiseau saying that I think Staropoli gets ragdolled. Yeah, we're going with the man himself, Roman Delije. Matt, our co-main event, I really want to hear what people are thinking about. In this one, we have a really tough out Walt Harris, who after the first round, 2-6 with 1 no contest, where he did win a decision, but hey, USADA, we're knocking on the door. But in this fight against Marcin Tybura, it is, and a lot of people were saying, it's either knockout by Harris early, or Tybura is able to get the decision win, or finish it after the first round. And I'm in agreement with that one. I'm 100% with that one, because for Marcin Tybura, his 2020 was absolute fireworks.
It was.
The guy went 4-0, and he looked amazing. And for Walt Harris, it's been so-so. He's lost a good competition. He's beat maybe not the best guys. So it is a tricky fight for Walt Harris here. What are you thinking?
Listen, we all have those weird fighters out there that we like watching. I like watching Marcin Tybura, okay? And I'm not going to apologize for it. Okay? He's one of those fighters who people are just like, oh, Marcin Tybura, it's going to be a boring fight. No, it's not going to be. He's a guy who can weather a big storm and put it on you in that second and third round. He's a great example of just... He's a good striker. I wouldn't say he's a great striker by any means. He's an okay volume striker. Got a really nice left high kick. We saw it against Fabricio Verdum in the 5th round of their main event. I know too much about Marcin Tybura. I'm sorry, everybody. And he also knocked out Luis Enrique with that left high kick as well.
Always looks tired, but always pushes a work rate. Looks like he could go to sleep after the fight.
He really does. And the Greg Hardy fight, listen, people were disrespecting my boy Marcin Tybura out there. They were like, listen, Greg Hardy, oh, he hits harder. It doesn't matter. Marcin Tybura has so much experience against top-level fighters. He's been in in there with some of the best. And yes, has he lost to some of them? Yeah, but he's beaten a lot of really good fighters too. And I think Walt Harris can go in there and knock out just about anybody in the first round of any fight. I really do. Like, if Walt Harris knocked out Derek Lewis in 1 minute, would I really be that surprised? Probably not. But the difference is that this fight really is kind of Walt Harris's whole career into one fight. You're either going to win this in 2 minutes, or we're going to see you struggle on the ground. Because this is my problem with Walt Harris. I don't think his shortcomings in grappling just come from his cardio. I just don't think he's a great grappler in the bottom position. And I think when you're a guy like Marcin Tybura, and you know that your opponent can't really wrestle, Marcin Tybura is only going to go in there to wrestle, especially throughout that first round. I just think Marcin Tybura is going to gain as this fight progresses, and I do think he's going to put it on Walt Harris.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Tybura's only kind of gained, especially for an older guy at 35, but it's not like Walt Harris is any spring chicken. He's older, almost 38. And then in terms of the weight, it was asked, didn't Tybura weigh in around 240, weighed 251, with Walt Harris, who weighed 254 his last fight, coming in an extra 10 pounds, which, again, the Boser effect, but this is an older guy that's up at 264, so I would think, again, if you're Walt Harris, you gain weight in the fact that you think you can gain a bit of a grappling advantage, you're harder to take down, but I still do like Tybura in this fight.
No, I do quite a bit. Because the thing with Tybura is, we've seen him in fights like this before. Like, again, the Greg Hardy fight was basically this fight. I'm not going to disrespect Walt Harris like that. Walt Harris has a much, much better chance of beating Marcin Tybura than Greg Hardy did. But again, it comes down to, do I think Walt Harris can land that one big shot? Personally, I don't think he can against Tybura.
All right, Matt, we'll move on to our main event of the evening. We have Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on Augusto Sakai. So, if you haven't done it yet, because there's almost 600 tuning in, only 181 likes, get it over 200. Subscribe if you haven't, because we're on our way to 25,000. And I have a great little content piece coming up, and I'm not even going to tease it at all. There's big interviews coming out, too. I already talked about it. Tyler Diamond and Juicy, but not that one. Juicy J, Julian Rose. He's got a big fight coming up. We're going to have the interview dropping shortly. Now, Matt, Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Augusto Sakai. 66% of the fans have Rozenstruik to win over on Fight Night Picks on Instagram. If we have a look at the odds, it was basically a pick 'em fight. It was close. Right now, Rozenstruik a minus 121. A little bit of late money coming in on Sakai, minus 101. Jairzinho, what has he done his last number of fights? I'm going to wait. And against Overeem, it worked, and it booked him a huge fight. But against Cyril Gane, it didn't. And he got backed up, and he got kind of grinded on against the cage. He went down. The round would end while every fight started standing again. And it wasn't the best of fights. So Rozenstruik, oddly enough, gets another main event. And Laos Nan makes a great point. Did you notice how small Jairzinho looked in front of Augusto? Well, listen. I threw it down that Rozenstruik is, 6'4", and Sakai 6'3", 6'4", but they lie. He has a fluffer. He's probably 6'2".
Well, no, he put out a tweet this week actually explaining that when the UFC first did his height, when he first joined the UFC, they actually messed up and said 6'4". He is 6'2", though. Yeah. He did tweet that out himself.
Yeah, he's 6'2". So from now on, I'm going to put it in there, but I always throw that disclaimer out there because people like to get upset in comment sections. But Rozenstruik, yeah, is a smaller guy. Augusto Sakai. I watched the big card breaks the other day because I had time and I was on Instagram and I like to watch people open cards. So I watched it and they broke a card and it was Augusto Sakai. And they had a guy that plays for the Patriots on and they were laughing and tee-hee. And look at this guy, he has airbrushed abs. No, he doesn't. This guy has abs, but he has flab because he's a guy that lost weight and he's in super shape. And he talked about it coming into this week that he's in the best shape of his life. And you can see it. He looks thinner in the face. Like, he really looks like he's focused up hard on this fight. So, for Augusto Sakai, if it's 100% Sakai, what does he do well? Backs guys up and strikes with really good length, and he can mix in a little bit of the grappling if he needs to. Now, against Blagoy-Ivanov, no, especially later on in the fight, and I didn't think he won that fight.
Just gonna grab all these foam.
Augusto Sakai can do a lot of things really well. It just so happens that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a kickboxing wizard.
Is he, though? This is my problem with Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I think he's going to win this fight. I'm going to get that out of the way right now. Jairzinho's only good as a counter-striker. He's not that good moving forward. And I shouldn't even say that, because he is good moving forward. He just doesn't do it. Like, go back to the Junior Santos fight, for instance. Like, JDS hit him with a few good shots, but the second he decided to move forward on JDS, he knocked him out. Hit him with that one shovel hook into the overhand right, and JDS was done. Craig saves
we almost had a computer totally fry out because it wasn't plugged in. We were down to about 5%, but now we're back. So again, continue.
So for me, I just think Augusto Sakai, here's the good thing about Sakai. He's going to force Jairzinho to fight because Cirogan didn't force Jairzinho to fight. Like, that was just a terrible fight. Cirogan won, that's all that matters, but it was a good fight. Cirogan didn't gain any stock because of that performance. And for Rozenstruik, I think at some point, Augusto Sakai is going to stand in the pocket for slightly too long, and Jairzinho will make him pay for it, because the Sakai, he does have really good output for a heavyweight, and in a 5-round fight, I do favor him just because the rounds maybe a little bit more than I would in a 3-round fight, but I do think that eventually he is just going to stand in that pocket for 1 second too long, get hit by a big shot. With Rozenstruik, he's got that great check left hook. He does have great high kicks too. Now, it's going to be hard to kick a guy who's 6'4" in the head, but still, Jairzinho does have really good kicks, and if he does mix those up with his punching combinations, he has a handful for just about anybody. So I do have to pick Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but I'll admit, there's a version of this fight where he just backs up like he's Tyron Woodley against Vicente Luque and gets pieced up by Augusto.
And maybe he'll get a fight against a Paul brother, like the third Paul brother, Paul brother's dad.
He's like selling insurance.
Rozenstruik and that guy from Ohio. But yeah, when I look at this one, I get the underdog, man. I got Sakai. I had him earlier on in the week, and when I set it up, that's the way I was going. Lowest non-saying laptop. Yeah, we run OBS off the laptop. And then actually, if you want an inside baseball close to the end of the show, we've got the Mac Tower with the webcam on top. And we got our mic in front of us. It's quite the setup, really. You can actually see the mic right there. But yeah, for me, again, I do have Sakai in this one. And yeah, I've got a fair amount of underdogs on this card as it is. So again, what we do with question mark kicks, we went all the way up through. But if you missed something, and I've seen people over in the comments section, we go all the way back down through. So let's do it, Matt. Again, toss us a like if you haven't already. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to back out. And again, when we're talking possible fight of the night, there's so many ones out there. What's like the definitive one that you have?
I've said it a lot, but I'm going to go back to it. Like, Ponzinibbio Baez is the fight I'm looking the most forward to tonight, and it's not even close. Like, the main event tonight's okay, but I am looking forward to that fight the most because it's a crossroads fight, but at kind of the highest level possible. Because you've got Ponzinibbio, not only just a good fighter, he was a great fighter at one point and a former top contender, fighting Baeza, who's got good wins so far, but he really needs that one big stamp. And I do feel like with a win over Ponzinibbio, like that's the name that a guy like Miguel Baeza really needs on his record.
All right, Matt. Well, let's flip it down through this card. We have Claudio Puelles taking on the really tough out in Jordan Leavitt. Again, personally, I feel like both of these guys do a lot of the same things very well. I like Jordan Leavitt's wins on the regional scene. I like his win on Contender Series. I like him in the UFC. It's just a really tough fight, and I do like the striking of Puelles. And to answer Prince Vegeta's son's comment, one guy's a minus 1,400 favorite, so chalky, but I'll go with that. I don't love it.
Floyd Mayweather beat the Big Show, so he could probably beat Jake Paul or Logan Paul, right? Maybe?
Yeah, I've got Puelles in this fight, but again, it's a 50-50 to me, and I can definitely see Leavitt winning.
I like the cardio and the chain wrestling of Jordan Leavitt. This is a really fun fight between two pretty good prospects, honestly, this early on in the card. So I do think this fight will deliver entertainment-wise, but I do have Leavitt at the end of the day.
All right, Matt, we're split on that one, and we'll move on to our next fight, which for some reason is a little difficult. We have Sean Woodson taking on Youssef Zalal. We're split on this one, too. I've got the favorite in Sean Woodson, but it's a tricky fight.
I like Youssef Zalal's ability to mix his martial arts a little bit more. So, yeah, I do have to pick Youssef Zalal in this one.
Fair enough. We move into our next one. Manon Fiorot taking on Tabatha Ricci. If you like Manon Fiorot at more than a 5-1, yikes. Like, check it. But I have Fiorot here, but I can see a world where Ricci gets one takedown, they're both dry, and she gets a submission.
Listen, for Tabatha Ricci, like, it's good to be impressed by her earlier fights, but this is a massive step up against a much bigger fighter, and she's had basically zero preparation. First takedown or not, I think this is a terrible fight for her. I like Fiorot quite a bit in this one.
All right, Matt, we move on to our next one. We have Alain Petrie taking on Mason Jones. I got Wales' own Jones in this one.
I like Jones quite a bit in this fight, but this fight could be really fun.
Should be a lot of fun. Our next one, Francisco Trinaldo, Muslim Salikhov. I've got Salikhov, but again, another really tricky one.
Old man strength Trinaldo is another animal, but no, I agree with you. I do like Salikhov, but this is another one of those, like, could it be a fight of the night?
Yeah, it could be. Next one, Tanner Boser's taking on Ilir Latifi. I have Old Man Sweden, Ilir Latifi.
I just think with Tanner Boser's ability to volume strike on the outside, it is going to cause Latifi trouble. And my problem with Latifi is at light heavyweight, when he was connecting on guys, it would hurt them. At heavyweight, I just don't think he has that same level of power.
All right, Matt. Our next one, we have Dela Rosa, Ariane, Lipski. Definitely going with Dela Rosa.
Yeah, Dela Rosa's ability to wrestle should win her this fight.
All right, Matt. Our next one, we have Makwan, Amirkhani, Kamuela, Kirk. I've got the newcomer Kirk in this fight.
Makwan Amirkhani lost to Edson Barbosa, but I don't think that means he's also going to lose to Kamuela Kirk. I think he's worse than a top 15 guy, but I don't think he's at the level of like entry-level UFC fighters. I do think Amirkhani's going to be able to get back on the horse.
Next one, we have Tom Breeze taking on Antonio Hoyo, both going Breeze.
I mean, if I ever pick Antonio Hoyo on this channel, I'll be surprised by how we've been going throughout his career, but yeah, I like Tom Breeze in this.
Crash Styles definitely has Boser to win, coming from Alberta. Matt Dushko Todorovic taking on Gregory Rodriguez. This one is another one that I have as a 50-50, so I'm close with Rodriguez rather, but I am ultimately going with Todorovic. But again, if somebody over in the comments section could sway me, like that's how on the fence I am.
I've got Dushko in this fight. Again, I do feel like his last performance is kind of clouding people's judgment about how good he can be moving forward. Listen, he could get knocked out. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I've been wrong many times before, and if Dushko's the guy I go down with, I guess this is what it is. But yeah, I've got Dushko.
Donald E. Guys hitting us up in the super chat, officially starting your Meet Me in Vegas for UFC 264. See you there, brothers. Listen, because of the super chat, I'll give you a behind the scenes. I'm getting 2 posters done up. I've been doing the posters here, or the thumbnails, whatever, on the YouTube's last little bit. But we got our guy, GZFX, working on a couple different ones for UFC 263. There'll be a fight companion. There'll be all sorts of great stuff. And if UFC 264, Canadians can go to the States, which I don't think, like, that'll be August, maybe even September. But we'll be down there at some point. Clay's saying, surprise, Craig picked Kirk.
So am I.
Check out Sean Bitter's preview of that fight. But yeah, this one's tricky, both going with Dushko. Ponzinibbio, Baeza. I've got Baeza here.
I think Ponzinibbio cracks with a big shot, a la Douglas Lee, Andre Koreshkov, number 2. He might look bad until he gets cracked by a big shot, but yeah, I do think Ponzinibbio should be able to win this one. This is a great fight.
Didn't you have Baeza at the start?
No, I've got Ponzinibbio.
I've got Baeza. Matt, our next fight, we have Roman Dolidze taking on a really tough out in Laureano Staropoli. But we both have Dolidze.
Yeah, I just think at a certain point, size is going to win out. Listen, if Roman goes in there way overconfident like he has been before and just tries to throw bombs and gets tired, then I do see him probably losing this fight. But if he can, like we said, get those takedowns early, really impose his size, I do think Roman Dolidze can get this win.
Matt, we have 2 big fights left. Walt Harris taking on Tybura. I've got Tybura to get the win.
Yeah, so do I. Again, this is one of those classic Walt Harris, is he going to knock him out or not fights? And Marcin Tybura, listen, he's been stopped before by good fighters. I don't think Walt Harris is going to be the guy who's going to do it again.
And in our main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Augusto Sakai, it is a very, very intriguing fight. And if we get War Rozenstruik, holy smokes, you got to watch out for it. I've got Sakai, but it's a tricky one.
I think Rozenstruik's going to be able to catch him with a big shot. This should be a fun fight, because again, Augusto Sakai's style is catered towards making Jairzinho Rozenstruik do things. I don't just see this being one of those fights where they're kind of standing in the mirror looking at each other, so I do agree with you. I do like... Or no, sorry, I have to disagree. I do think Jairzinho's going to be able to catch him with a big shot walking in.
Laos Non saying he did have Baeza before, and you did. And you had him all week, and you had him at the start of the show, so what are you going with?
I did not. I had Ponzinibbio at the start of this show. I might have not picked him earlier on, but no, I do think Ponzinibbio, listen, if you were that good at one point throughout your career, I do think that if you get a bad fight out of the way, you can get back on the horse. We saw with people like Mackenzie. We see this with a lot of fighters. You miss time due to injury, you come back, have one bad performance, you get that under your belt, then you can come back and look like a better version of yourself. I'm going to go Ponzinibbio tonight, but again, that is the fight of the night.
QMK parlay is Tom Breeze minus 265, and the fight to go the distance between Woodson and Zalal, it ends up a plus 103. You're in the plus. I've got it. That's what I'm going with. Am I riding it strong? No chance in hell, because QMK Parlay's been missing the last couple of weeks. But hopefully you enjoy the content, Matt. Next week, UFC 263. We got all sorts of great stuff coming up. Like I said, there's that extra added content piece. So if you're not subscribed yet, you need to, because it's a push to 25,000. I think we can do it. As Steven Rawlings used to say on Twitter, it's hashtag Fight Night or Nation. And listen, it's been a crazy year so far. I can't wait to do more of these.
Yeah, we're almost at 25,000. Let's just keep this train rolling all throughout the year. It's going to be a great one. I can't wait for the fights tonight, oddly enough. Like, I've hyped myself up for them as we've been doing this show.
Matt, can't wait for it. We're split on a lot of the picks. Let us know in the comments who you have. And as we always say with Fight Night picks, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig
and Matt.